Daniel, tell Lamo that I am heading towards Mount Kailash to complete the Korah. This is me, Nick Middleton. I'm on a journey to Mount Kailash to complete a Korah.
Korah refers to a spiritual practice in which people walk around a sacred site. The author wants to do the Korah on Mount Kailash. Currently, he is staying in Ravu.
And this is Daniel, my friend and translator on this journey. This is Lamo, with whom I had stayed here in Ravu. And here's Satan, our skilled driver and guide for this journey. In the morning, when we were about to leave Ravu, a half-moon floated in the sky. As the sun emerged behind the mountains, the banks of cloud glowed pink, looking like long French loaves. As we were leaving, Lamo said she wanted to give me a farewell present. She gave me one of the long-sleeved sheepskin coats that other men wore. As we got into his car, Satan looked at me.
Ah, yes. Drogba, sir.
Why did Satan say this? Drogba is a Tibetan word that means nomadic people. Nick was wearing the sheepskin coat given by Lamo. The Jogbas also wear such coat. That is why Satan called him Jogba.
We are taking a shortcut to avoid the Changtang region. I know a route that goes southwest, almost directly towards Mount Kailash.
Do you think there will be any problems?
No problem, sir, if there is no snow.
What are the chances of snow there?
Not knowing, sir, until we get there.
From the hills of Ravu, the shortcut took us across vast open plains, with nothing in them except a few gazelles that would look up from biting the arid pastures.
Gazelle, an animal similar to deer.
Further, a great herd of wildess came into view.
See the pall of dust. That is a herd of Kiang. We are approaching them long before they appear.
Kiang, Tibetan ass.
As hills started to push up once more, we passed solitary Drogpas tending their flocks. They would pause and stare at our car, occasionally waving as we passed. We passed nomads' dark tents, usually with a huge black dog, a Tibetan Mastiff, standing guard. These dogs would lift their big heads and fix us in their sights. As we got closer, they would explode into action, speeding directly towards us. These black monsters usually wore bright red collars and barked furiously with massive jaws. It wasn't difficult to understand why Tibetan Mastiffs became popular in China's imperial courts. They were brought from Tibet as tribute. Now we could see snow-capped mountains. We entered a valley where the river was wide and mostly clogged with ice. As we gradually gained height, the valley sides closed in. The turns became sharper and the ride bumpier. I felt the pressure building up in my ears, held my nose, snorted, and cleared them. We struggled around another tight bend, and Satan stopped. He had opened his door and jumped out of his seat before I realized what was going on.
Snow.
A layer of snow lay across the track in front of us. The snow was on both sides, smoothing the slope. The side of the road was too steep, so we couldn't drive around the snow patch. Satan stepped on the snow and put his foot down to determine how thick it was. I looked at my wristwatch. We were at 5,210 meters above sea level. The snow doesn't look too deep.
The danger isn't its depth, so much as the icy top layer. If we slip off, the car could turn over.
Satan grabbed dirt and threw it on the snow. Daniel and I joined, and when it was safe to drive, we both stayed out of the vehicle to lighten Satan's load. He drove towards the snow without any difficulty. 10 minutes later, we stopped at another blockage. As Satan jumped out, he announced,
Not good, sir.
This time, he decided to drive off from the side. The slope was steep and decorated with rocks, but somehow, Satan drove around the snow. I checked my watch again. As we continued to climb, we were past 5,400 meters, and my head began to throb horribly. I drank some water, which is supposed to help when going up rapidly. We finally reached the top of the pass at 5,515 meters. There was a large cairn of rocks, decorated with white silk scarves and prayer flags.
Cairn of rocks, pile of rocks.
We all walked around the cairn in a clockwise direction, as is the tradition. Satan checked the tires on his vehicle. He stopped at the petrol tank and partially unscrewed the top, which emitted a loud hiss. Because the fuel expanded, due to the lower atmospheric pressure. It sounds dangerous to me.
Maybe, sir. But no smoking.
My headache cleared as we went down. At around 2 o'clock, we stopped for lunch. We ate noodles inside a long canvas tent, part of a work camp beside a dry salt lake. The plateau is dotted with salt flats and salty lakes, vestiges of the Tethys Ocean.
Let me explain. Millions of years ago, there was Tethys Ocean. When the Indian landmass collided with Asia, the Tethys Ocean disappeared. But its vestiges, that is, its signs still exist. The salt flats and lakes are the signs of the Tethys Ocean.
This area was very busy, with men in long sheepskin coats and salt-covered boots, working with pickaxes and shovels. They all wore sunglasses to protect against the bright light, as a steady stream of blue trucks, loaded with piles of salt, came out of the blindingly white lake. By late afternoon, we had reached the small town of Hor. We stopped at a tire repair shop.
I'm going to Lhasa. I have found a ride in this truck.
We had suffered 2 punctures, and Satan wanted to have them fixed, because he didn't have any spare tires left. Besides, the second tire he used as a replacement was as smooth as my bald head. Hor was a miserable place. There was no vegetation at all, just dust and rocks scattered with years of accumulated trash. This was unfortunate, because the town was on the shore of Lake NCERT, Tibet's most respected body of water. According to ancient Hindu and Buddhist beliefs, NCERT is the source of 4 great Indian rivers, the Indus, the Ganges, the Sutlej, and the Brahmaputra. In reality, only the Sutlej flows from the lake, but the headwaters of the other 3 rivers are nearby, on the slopes of Mount Kailash. We were close to the great mountain, and I was eager to move ahead. Let's continue.
No. First go and drink tea in the cafe. The only cafe in Hor.
The cafe, like all other buildings in the town, was made of badly painted concrete and had 3 broken windows. One of them had a nice view of the lake. I was served by a young Chinese man in a military uniform. Half an hour later, Satan freed me from my solitary wait, and we drove towards Mount Kailash. My experience in Hor was significantly different from the stories I had read about earlier travelers' first experiences. For example, Ikai Kawaguchi, a Japanese monk who arrived there in 1900, was so moved by the sacredness of the lake that he burst into tears. A couple of years later, the lake had a similar effect on Sven Hedin, a Swede. But now the town has become so miserable, with no vegetation, just dust and rocks. It was dark when we finally left, and after 10:30, we drew up outside a guest house in Darchen. Roaming around the open-air dump in Hor had worsened my cold. One of my nostrils was blocked. I wasn't sure if one nostril would provide me with enough oxygen. So, I started breathing through my mouth. After a while, I switched back to single nostril power. But just as I was about to fall asleep, I suddenly woke up. Something was wrong. My chest felt heavy. As I sat up, the feeling was relieved. But when I lay back down again, the same feeling, I again felt heaviness in my chest. Sitting up once more made me feel better. I tried to sit upright against the wall, but I couldn't relax enough to fall asleep. I was afraid to sleep. A little voice inside me was saying, "If I sleep, I might never wake up again." So, I stayed awake all night. The next morning, Satan took me to Darchen Medical College. It was new and looked like a monastery, with a solid door that led into a large courtyard. The consulting room was dark and cold. There was a Tibetan doctor who wore none of the equipment I had been expecting. No white coat. He looked like any other Tibetan, with a thick pullover and a hat. I couldn't sleep last night. When I lie down, my chest would feel heavy.
It's a cold. A cold and the effects of altitude. He will give you medicine.
Does he think I will recover enough to be able to do the Korah?
Oh yes, you will be fine.
He gave me a brown envelope containing 15 packets of paper. I had a 5-day course of Tibetan medicine. I opened the breakfast package. It contained a brown powder that I had to take with hot water. It tasted like cinnamon. The lunchtime and bedtime contents were brown, round balls. They looked like sheep dung. But, of course, I ate them. At night, I slept very soundly. Like a log, not a dead man.
What does this mean? Sleeping like a log is an idiom that means sleeping very deeply. Nick slept like a log, not a dead man. Means he had a deep and sound sleep, but he was not dead.
Once Satan was convinced I was going to survive, he left me.
As a Buddhist, I knew it didn't really matter if you passed away. But I thought it would be bad for business.
After a good night's sleep, Darchen looked less horrible. It was still dusty, but the sun shone in the clear sky, and I could see the Himalayas, dominated by a huge snow-capped mountain, Gurla. The town had some general stores, selling Chinese cigarettes, soaps, other basic needs, and prayer flags. In front of one store, men gathered for a game of pool, the table looking worn out. Nearby, women washed their long hair in the water of a narrow brook.
Brook, a small stream of water.
Darchen was relaxed and calm. But there was a significant drawback. There were no pilgrims.
Pilgrimage, journey to a sacred place. Pilgrims, people who do pilgrimage.
There were no pilgrims. Can you believe that? I had heard that during the peak pilgrimage season, the town buzzed with visitors. I had planned my arrival at the start of the season, but it appeared I was too early. One afternoon, I sat thinking about my options in Darchen's only cafe. The pilgrimage path was popular, but I didn't want to go alone. The route was seasonal, because it might be blocked by snow. Since Satan had left, I hadn't come across anyone in Darchen who knew enough English. The cafe was small, dark, and like a cave. A long metal stove ran down the middle. On the walls and ceiling hung colored sheets. The cafe had a single window, beside which I sat, so I could see the pages of my notebook. I'd also brought a novel. Norbu saw my book.
You English?
Yes, I am. He was wearing a wind cheater jacket and metal-rimmed spectacles, so I didn't think he was from Tibet. After ordering tea, he sat opposite my table.
I'm Tibetan, but I work in Beijing Academy of Social Sciences, in the Institute of Ethnic Literature.
Are you on some sort of field work?
Yes and no. I have come to do the Kora.
My heart jumped.
For many years, I have been writing academic papers about the Kailash Kora and its importance in various works of Buddhist literature, but I have never actually done it myself. And why are you here?
I have also come to do the Kora.
Wow, we could be a team. 2 students who have escaped from the library.
What does he mean? Norbu and Nick, both are students. Norbu has been researching about the Kailash Kora, and Nick Middleton is a geographer and a writer. This time, they are going to experience the Kora in real life, instead of just reading about it. That's why, 2 students, who have escaped from the library.
My initial relief at meeting Norbu was tempered when I realized that he was as ill-equipped as me for the Kora. He kept telling me how fat he was and how hard it was going to be.
Very high up. So tiresome to walk.
I realized he wasn't a practicing Buddhist, but he had enthusiasm. And he was, of course, Tibetan. Although I had originally decided to do the Kora with religious pilgrims, but after thinking, I decided that perhaps Norbu would be the ideal companion.
We should hire some yaks to carry our luggage, and I have no intention of prostrating myself around the mountain. Not possible.
It wasn't his style, and besides, his tummy was too big for prostrating.
What does this mean? Prostrating means lying down in a position of worship. At Mount Kailash, many pilgrims do this. They prostrate every step while doing the Kora. Like this. But why did Norbu say it was not possible for him to do this? He was very fat. His fat tummy wouldn't allow him to lie down.